Why has literally almost no one seen this? Seriously, Bunny Girl Senpai was the anime of 2018 to the surprise of absolutely everyone who saw the screenshots and predictable outpouring of doujins. Holy crap, it's clickbait in anime form, dude. So then, how did the next 2 movies come and go over the last couple of years without anyone batting an eye? Sure, the first movie in 2019 didn't push the medium into new heights like the original series, but it was still pretty good, so when the next 2 dropped over a year ago, I expected to see some fanfare rather than the complete radio silence from everyone everywhere. Sure, it was only in theaters here for like a week and then took over a year to come out anywhere else, but guys, this is Bunny Girl Senpai. So as apparently the world's only remaining Bunny Girl Senpai fan, let's talk about what made the series so good, why these last 2 movies absolutely live up to the same quality standard as the original anime release, and where it's going from now. You know, despite being the king of weeaboos, it blows my mind every time I realize there's people who actually think Japanese high school is some magical paradise where the world's sexiest people do world-shattering things every single day. Newsflash, anime lied to you. It is just as boring and sad as in your country, and if you went there, you'd only get shoved into your locker twice as often because you're a cringy weeaboo who barely has the social skills to avoid starving to death. But maybe you would be slightly less of a weeaboo if you watched— Wait, I'm sorry, one of the most insightful reflections on Japanese society ever written is called Teenage Pig Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai? Okay, fuck me, I guess. But maybe this message was aimed at the people who most need to hear it, because Japan has this concept that Westerners don't really think about called reading the air. You might think of the air as the fabric of society, the invisible force existing between and binding together every single one of us. And being able to read the air means being able to fit in, to go with the flow and not stand out, and to understand what it means to live up to the expectations of the world around you. And because Japanese society is such a cohesive whole, because the needs of the group come before the individual, the ability to read the air is one of the key things you need to learn to not be such a fucking weeaboo. So the protagonist, Sakura, is someone who can perfectly read the air, but chooses to ignore it. To him, why would he give a shit? Why would it matter what everyone else thinks when you would be happier just being your own person? Why would you waste your time trying to live up to the expectations of people you barely know and care even less about? But then he meets legendary actor Mai, who is so famous and successful that she doesn't just read the air, she becomes it. She is the air. And so when the high school air is too afraid to even try to get close to the untouchable Sakurajima Mai, too afraid to so much as acknowledge her existence, she starts disappearing for real. So Mai is a complete contradiction of Sakura's whole life because the air is who Mai is as a person. And if that's what's making her disappear, how can you reconcile this? How can you fight something that does not and cannot really exist? And to answer this, I actually just want to read a passage from the book because you should all go and read this too. みんながそうしてるからそれが正しいとも限らない。だいたいみんなとは誰だ？彼女とではなければ、Sakuraも正体不明のみんなの一部であり続けた。Sakuraも彼女を苦しめた原因の一部だった。What Sakura realizes is that by choosing to ignore the air, he's just taking the path of least resistance, making him no different than everyone else. He is, in his own way, still disappearing into the masses, still becoming a part of everyone. But what does everyone even mean anyway? What he learns is the only way to transcend the air is not to ignore it, but to fight it. And the only way to fight it is to become it, to direct the fabric of society around yourself and your actions. To be not one person lost in a crowd of hundreds, thousands of people, but to be the center of that crowd, to bridge the irony between the one thing he most despises and the one thing he most admires. To stand up and be an individual. So when I tell you that this is just the first part of Bunny Girl Senpai, you might get an inkling of why I think this anime is so fucking good. Every character struggles with their role in society, battles the question of how to accept your own flaws and imperfections and love yourself for who you are while striving to be the person you're meant to be. Tomoe, Sakura's coworker in junior, befriending him after an awkward run-in with the police, falls in love with him after telling her new big city friends they're dating because it would be easier than admitting that they're not. And so she spends so much time trying to pretend to be someone she isn't, trying to live life to everyone else's expectations, that when she realizes she's fallen for someone who won't love her back, she just kind of hopes the world will reorient itself conveniently around her. And then it does, trapping them in a repeating time loop that only ends when she learns to think for herself and express her own desires rather than contort her personality to fit in with the group, that she's finally able to start moving on. Futaba, developing faster and more visibly than other girls, struggling to deal with the changing perceptions of the pubescent youth around her, splits into two different people as one version of herself starts posting questionable photos online. And it's only when she's able to stop denying this part of herself and accept that it's okay to not fit inside a tiny little box that she's able to reconcile her own self-image with the world around her. Mai's sister suddenly barges in on Sakura's life one day when she causes a Freaky Friday trying to live up to her mother's expectations of her as an idol and wishes that her life was more like her sister's. And so the entire story is written around quasi-scientific discussions of these magical elements of the show called puberty syndrome, which invoke the quantum physics property of the observer. Not because any of it is actually supposed to be what's happening, but because it's exactly this that causes the fabric of society. It's everyone observing themselves and everyone else, and how everyone else in turn observes them. It's not that we think. No, it's that we observe, therefore we are. And at the center of all these stories is the relationship between Sakura and his sister, Kaede, who stopped going to school after she started being bullied by her class, an event that started leaving physical bruises across her body and a massive scar across Sakura's chest as he failed to protect her. And, as a consequence, Kaede lost all memory of herself other than her fear of the outside world. And as each of these stories progresses, Sakura is there helping his sister, helping her achieve her dreams so she can eventually reclaim her rightful place in society, until one day she wakes up as her old self, leaving Sakura conflicted, proud of his sister, yet saddened by the loss of the person she became, the Kaede that he was able to protect. Which all accumulates in the two new movies about Kaede as she picks up the pieces of her former life and returns to school. On the outside, she seems happy and healthy, but one does not simply recover from spending 2 years shut inside and waking up as a completely different person. So, when her school tells her to think about her future, about what high school she wants to go to, she doesn't know. How can she decide? Of course, that doesn't matter when the guidance counselor sits down with her, Sakura, and their father with a presentation about what she thinks is best for Kaede, treating her as an object, a statistic, a problem to be dealt with rather than a person with thoughts and feelings and hopes and dreams. Not someone whose life was ruined by the air, but as a part of it, as a pawn to be shuffled and moved so as to disrupt the flow of society as little as possible. Before we really get into this movie, though, I want to break down the idea of the air a little more. Because a lot of weebs like to go around repeating cliched Japanese ideas like wabi-sabi and the nail that sticks up gets pounded down. You know, things that no Japanese person will ever actually say, but lets foreigners convince themselves that repeating them makes you sound cultured and intelligent. Wow, did you know that you can never really know what a Japanese person thinks? They have this concept called honne and tatemae, which means your public and private self, because like they're different from your real selves, which you'll never see when they talk to you, a foreigner. Bitch, what are you talking about? I don't go around telling my coworkers that I actually think they're a gang of retarded apes that couldn't problem solve their way out of a fucking sandwich, but that's not because I have developed tatemae, bro. It's because I'm a functional adult. Like, bro, that's called being polite. On the other hand, though, the air is a concept you will hear if you live in Japan, and that's why it's the beating heart and soul of this anime. I sometimes wonder what the real difference is because, like, this isn't really not a thing where I'm from. People think and act in groups. That's not called being Japanese, that's called being human. But I think what is a bit different in Japan is that people will tend to act upon the knowledge and expectation that everyone else will also follow the path of least resistance and put the needs of the group before almost anything else. So I bring this up because that's exactly what the guidance counselor has chosen for Kaede, an online correspondence school, the path of least resistance, the easy way out. And not once does either she nor Kaede's father stop and ask, Kaede, what do you want? It's only when Sakura finally breaks the air and asks Kaede that her opinion is even considered, and then immediately discarded when the counselor tells her that she thinks she'll fail. But Kaede, having spent the last 2 years alienated from the rest of society, is determined to take back her life, even if it hurts. She wants to be able to go to Sakura's high school, to once again be a normal girl just like everyone else. And so, with the help of Sakura, with the help of Mai and Nodoka, she sits down. And she studies, and studies, and studies every single day to put in her high school application, to take the entrance exams by herself, because, well, it's not what society expects of her, it's what she wants, even if it hurts. Even if other people tell her that she can't, she is determined to catch up to her class and be a normal girl just like everyone else. And so, when she inevitably fails, Sakura sits down to talk to her about the online school, because he looked into it and, much to his surprise, was presented with a group of happy students who, like Kaede, were all hikikomori, alienated from their peers, but with the help of online classes are able to take small steps towards normalcy. And Sakura thought, maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be that bad. Going to the correspondence school, sure, it doesn't require as much work. Sure, she'll be different from everyone, but what does everyone even mean? Which one is really the easy way out? Which one is actually taking the path of least resistance? The path where you work until you collapse, all for the approval of a ghost? Or the one where you find a life that works for you? Nodoka's bandmate attends this school because she, unable to read the air, struggled to fit in, to do what everyone thought was best, what was normal. But why would that matter? Everyone was against her mother having a baby at 18 too, but who the hell is everyone? To say that everyone is a certain way is easy, lazy even. What if the easiest thing for everyone else is for you to keel over and die? If you just do what everyone does, but everyone is a statement that has no meaning, then your life itself becomes meaningless, forever chasing that ghost. So, why was Kaede struggling so hard for it? It's fine to work hard if there's something you want, if there's someone you want to be, but to do so just to be like everyone? No. And ironically, the guidance counselor herself is also taking the path of least resistance, finding the place where Kaede has the best chance of succeeding by not once listening to Kaede's own wishes and telling her to go to an online school. But even if she never listened to what she wants, maybe she actually understood what was best for Kaede all along. I mean, it's her fucking job after all. So, the irony at the heart of all this is, which school is following the will of society? Which school is taking the path of least resistance? Doing what everyone else does, or taking the easy route and playing life by your own rules? The answer, I think, is obvious. It doesn't matter. It's not up to me to say, or you, or anyone else. The only person who can decide this is each individual person themselves. What do you want to do? But what if you never had a choice? What if you weren't doing what was expected of you, weren't doing what you wanted to do, but were merely doing what you had to? Which leads us to the second movie, where we find that it's Sakura's turn to experience puberty syndrome when he finds himself, like Mai so many months ago, disappearing in front of everyone's eyes. Because he and Kaede went and finally reunited with their mother, whom he'd tried to forget. Because the one taking care of Kaede was him. He became their mom. And seeing their mother again, seeing her get better, seeing her once again able to become a mother for his sister, he wonders if maybe Kaede does not need him anymore, but also realizes that he resents her, his own mother, and that he also resents himself for not being able to protect Kaede. And he realizes the reason he was so attached to the other Kaede is because of his failure to protect her. The new Kaede, living in a perfect, sheltered life, locked away in their tiny apartment with only a mild-mannered cat to bother her. The only thing breaking this perfect little life was the unfortunate knowledge that it, at some point, had to end. So, realizing that that time is gone, his thoughts turn to their mother, and he feels alone. Because despite how grown up he had to become, despite how well he was able to take care of his sister, there was no one to take care of him. He was a 16-year-old kid, and so a part of him was afraid to admit that he still needed his mother and that she was not there for him. But now, just as Kaede no longer needs him, he no longer needs his mother, and that too, the idea that he may be losing his place in his own family, scares him. Every aspect of this anime is about finding your place in the world, finding your place in society, finding your place within yourself. The air, despite being a force manipulating the world around them, isn't magic. It's merely the consequence of the conflicting perceptions of every single member of their society. And it's explained with quantum physics because it's not how anyone is, but rather how everyone is seen, how they see the world, and how the world gazes back at them. But more importantly, how they see themselves and their own place in it. Bunny Girl Senpai is a must-watch for anyone interested in living in Japan because it is a story about the beating heart of Japanese society, a series of lessons for any prospective shikaijin. And watch you must, because you bet your ass this series is still going. I mean, for one, I have all the books. I've only read the first 5, but Kamoshida is a fucking genius. Taking something like this and laying it out so approachable and so funny and so human is a rare gift. There's one more movie scheduled for this year, and then there are at least 2 more volumes, maybe more. I haven't read them yet. But dear God, I don't know why they're movies rather than another anime series, but seriously, watch them. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, you'd be doing me a huge favor by stepping on that like button. And, as always, thank you so much for your time, friends. And I will see you in the next video.